And I say so from my heart because I know firsthand the difference it made in our country being able to respond as well as we did to the COVID pandemic. I go further. I would not know where we will be a year from now if we do not continue to have a contractual relationship with Cuban nurses because our public health system is deeply in need of the additional nursing support. And that we can add to this the post-basic training that the Senior Minister spoke about in ophthalmology and glaucoma and other eye-related conditions is absolutely important to ordinary Barbadians. I make the point that those who can afford to go to the US and the UK will go. But the people who will benefit most from this are ordinary people without whom the ability to see will be compromised. Similarly, the request for us to work together on the matter of the diabetes medication that can work particularly effectively on diabetic ulcers. My people here have heard me say over and over that Barbados is in the middle of a diabetes epidemic. And therefore, if I have to put on a priority list of 1 to 10 where this falls at 9.9. Because this is going to make the difference in the lives of ordinary people in every single parish in this country. And it is fortuitous that the Senior Minister, Bruno, who you know well, as previously as Minister of Foreign Affairs, is now the Minister of Health, and is therefore in a position to work expeditiously and a manner that can make this a reality for Barbadians in the next few months through the appropriate regulatory channels that he has to pass through within the context of the ministry. And similarly with the chemotherapeutics. So we start at health. The other area where we go immediately to people is in culture and sports. And I should have said perhaps just now in my glee of being Minister of Culture for a moment that we will also commit to sending the coaches depending on your desire and timelines for cricket, road tennis and netball. It is a promise that was made and it should have been pursued already, and the only thing that will stop it now is the dates that you give for them to come and to be able to work. I deliberately located the cooperation at young people because they're the ones who are going to grow with the relationships. And if we can have people in the formative years of their lives making those connections, doing joint songs together, doing public art together, doing films together, then we will have created connections, doing dance together that will last for a lifetime. So what we are seeking to do is to establish roots that go even deeper than the ones that we have here. From the perspective of tourism, if we don't get the air transport, I almost feel like a stuck record on this. If we don't get the air transport and at least a single ferry moving up and down, then the ability for people to move will be compromised. It is significant that the Air Services Agreement was one of the first agreements signed when we established diplomatic relations, and it is also significant that the thing that will forever bind us in adversity is the terrorist act that took place in the waters of Barbados in September of 1976 that regrettably remains as a blemish in the Americas for the fact that the persons responsible for the perpetration of that awful act and the murder of all of those persons has never spent, as Plastic Bag would say, a Calypsonian of ours, not a day, not a single day for the actions that led to the loss of lives of so many. It is therefore important for us to see how we can resume some kind of scheduled license service, even if it starts off once a week. We know that Jamaica and I think it's Panama and Colombia have both been hubs that you have, but we believe that there is a need for another hub in the Eastern and Southern Caribbean. And we already have an air services agreement that allows flights to Barbados with onward movement to Trinidad or Guyana or Suriname. Let us make it happen. And similarly, we have that Barbados is entitled to designate a carrier with onward movement from Cuba to Canada as well. And therefore, the Minister of Tourism and International Transport will be encouraged to make this happen. I also believe that it is something that can help facilitate a very difficult moment for the Caribbean with inter-regional travel as well. The others have spoken extensively on agriculture and education, the MOU in education. I, 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 I am one of those who feel that if the Organization of American States is to be of value to the people of the Americas, it must abandon everything that it is doing and concentrate on one thing and one thing alone, making sure that people can be bilingual at least in the hemisphere. And at least then they will add serious value in a way that they have not been doing recently. So we accept that. We accept the need for the education MOU, and Ministry of Education regrettably has not been moving as fast on this. And I'm asking them please to do so because this is important. No, I know. And we also know that it is funny how things change. Barbados led the world in cane breed research in the 19th century, and now we're asking Cuba for help on increasing yields in sugarcane. And it just goes to show you that there is no permanent up or permanent down, and what is, can be permanent is the cooperation. And I hope, therefore, that we can work on that and the apiculture. The last point that I'd like to make, and we can talk about broadening agricultural production tomorrow with the regional talks, because that's where the region is at anyhow. We are going to have to find a payment system to facilitate trade. And we are committing, as I said, to work with others and yourselves to be able to develop a payment system, even if with the help of the African Exim Bank that has already offered to use the Pan-African payment system within the region. And we will certainly proceed. I won't speak to this publicly, but we will proceed to see how quickly we can find a mechanism that will allow for greater interregional trade that does not depend on the United States of America and their shameful continued actions that lead to blockades. The last point that I'd like to make before stopping this evening relates to innovation and climate, the greening, and the blue economy. Barbados has spent significant sums of money in the last 40 years in coastal protection. We are an island. We don't have a lot of bays. A lot of our coast is exposed. And therefore, I believe that this is an area for significant cooperation bilaterally, but even multilaterally within CARICOM, because Belize, for example, in the protection of their reefs of wealth, has also spent significant sums of money doing research. And next month, I will sign a marine spatial planning process to get that going, to be able to conserve at least 30% of our maritime area, to ensure the replenishment of our fishery stock and the other things that are necessary to preserve the blue economy, which is 424 times the size of our land space. So it is important to us. Similarly, I really do believe and would ask you if you are prepared to allow us to send a
about to begin the signing of the Memorandum of Cooperation between Export Barbados and Bayacuba Pharma in the area of biotechnology. Signing on the behalf of Barbados is the Chief Executive Officer of Export Barbados, Mr. Mark Hill, and signing for Bayacuba Pharma is President of Bayacuba Pharma, Dr. Eduardo. Listamos. Thank you. We will now have statements from Prime Minister of Barbados, the Honorable Mia Amor Motley, and the President of Cuba, Miguel Diaz-Canel. Thank you.
En la tarde de hoy hemos sostenido encuentros con la primera ministra, la honorable Mia Amor Motley, y la presidencia, su excelencia, la muy honorable Sandra Brunella Meiso.
During this meeting, we expressed our interest in expanding our relationship between the two countries. We are satisfied that our cooperation in health and sports has been favorable to both countries. We have been looking for new areas of cooperation.
La inversión, la biotecnología.
Biotechnology, health, agriculture, climate change, sports, culture, and education, among others. We recognize that the role of CARICOM as a regional organization to provide a framework for political cooperation and South-South cooperation in the Caribbean. We are certain that the results of tomorrow's summit will be satisfactory and will contribute to greater relations between Cuba and the CARICOM countries. We thank Barbados for sustained support from 1966 and the report that Cuba presents annually to the UN Assembly to bring an end to the financial blockade against my country. I want to express our deep gratitude for the visit that's taking place now. And the official conversations that we have had have surpassed our expectations. And they've given us the energy to continue cooperating, to extend and deepen our relations. And they are an important commitment from Barbados and its government and its Prime Minister and its people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Miguel Diaz-Canel, my dear brother, ministers from both Cuba and Barbados, distinguished public servants and members of the media as well. I am truly happy to be here this evening to, first and foremost, on behalf of the people of Barbados, to say thank you. And to say thank you because for the last just over 2 years, Barbadians have benefited from more than 100 nurses and Cuban doctors who have literally left their families at the most difficult of times so to do, and to be present to be able to allow us to provide critical medical care to Barbadians. We talk often about diplomatic support and diplomatic cooperation, but I can think of no greater example since being an independent country of the level of commitment and sacrifice at a time when most would be running in the other direction. And therefore, I really do have to say, my brother, thank you.
Thank you.
I start here because the relationship with Cuba and Barbados, more than anything else, has always been driven by people interaction. And I think you would have heard the President reflect on the courage that was exhibited by the 4 Caribbean leaders in 1972, at a time when only Mexico in the Americas recognized Cuba, for Caribbean leaders to surpass all others in this hemisphere with respect to the courage needed in order to be able to recognize Cuba as a fellow Caribbean nation with whom we wanted to continue to be engaged. There was a recognition that the movement between Cuba and each of our countries long predated the 20th century, and therefore to be artificially separated from a Caribbean nation made no sense then, in the same way that it makes no sense now. And we have come to see over the years the consequences of the actions taken against the Cubans, including Barbados' really only experience with terrorism as an independent nation. And all who live here will know of the monument in Paynes Bay, which reflects the fact that that Cubana plane which left Grantley Adams Airport literally exploded before the eyes of many Barbadians as it went down off our west coast and killed too many people, that no one has ever paid a day for it, is one of the great mysteries of the geopolitical world of the 20th century. As it relates, however, to what we are discussing today, to deepen our relationship, we've had discussions from trade and investment, to biotechnology, to health, to agriculture, to education, to sports and youth empowerment, and to culture. And let me start where I think immediately there is the potential for the greatest benefit to tens of thousands of Barbadians. Barbadians have heard us as a government reflect that we are in the middle of a diabetes epidemic. There are simply too many Barbadians who lose limbs because of the diabetic condition, and there's simply too much pressure on our healthcare system as a result. The Cubans have developed medication that can effectively work to reduce diabetic ulcers and the extent to which it can impair the quality of life and lead to amputations. And we have therefore agreed that our appropriate regulatory agencies should be in discussion with theirs to see as a matter of urgency how Barbadians too may benefit, and to reduce the number of our own families who are regrettably exposed to this awful condition. Similarly, we have agreed that there should be training and post-basic training for our nurses in conditions related to ophthalmology, glaucoma, and any other eye-related issues. As you know, Operación Milagro has been a significant benefit to many Caribbean people. And while we will continue to support that, we want also to be able to boost our capacity domestically to deliver the highest possible training and support to our people. There will also be support with respect to chemotherapeutics, more support in terms of also moving in to agriculture, biopesticides, our ability to be able to increase our sugarcane yields. It is one of the great paradoxes, and the President reflected with me earlier that they have benefited from varieties from Barbados in the past, but we have so lost so much of the institutional knowledge of our own sugar industry that we too now will cooperate with Cuba to be able to boost our yield and operation of other uses for the sugar cane as opposed to sugar. In addition, we've also had very good discussions on how we can reinforce, and you saw the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding with Cuba Pharma and BioCuba Pharma and Export Barbados, because it's intended to see, as we look to bring about greater pharmaceutical equity in Barbados and the Caribbean and the Americas, how we may work with this agency in the area of pharmaceuticals and biotechnology, because Cuba has shown the world that it can lead in its research and in its development of biopharmaceutical products that, once again, like the one I referred to just now with diabetes, can benefit all of our people. In addition, we believe that the technology transferred for the development of the life sciences industries in our own country from Cuba will benefit Barbadians, and therefore we look forward to operationalizing aspects of this MOU. We have also agreed, and you have heard us speak over and over, of the need to be able to expand the opportunities for as many Barbadians as possible in language development. And I hope that in the near future there will be a memorandum of understanding signed with the Cuban government and the Barbados government through the Ministry of Education. We have already settled most of the terms of it, and it is now for us to operationalize it so that we can have enhanced training on both sides in language development, because our people must be able to move freely and communicate freely and do everything else freely. In addition to that, we have committed as a country, in recognition of Cuba's wonderful ability with respect to culture and artistic pursuits, to make available for Barbadians who are in the area of arts opportunities for exchanges, facilitating partnerships, both directions, Cuba and Barbados, and to use the Arts and Sports Promotion Fund that we have to be able, over the course of the next 5 years, to support $1 million each year for the benefit of our performing artists, our visual artists, those involved in fashion, those involved in food, those involved in film, those involved in dance. I said the performing arts, so that includes dance, to participate together. But above all else, to be able to also facilitate an exchange of young Barbadians and Cubans on an annual basis, so that they will create their own symbiotic relationships that will go beyond anything that we as two governments can do for them. With respect to sports, Cuba has continued to provide support for Barbados in the area of coaches, and we believe the time has now come for reciprocal treatment. And to that extent, the areas of netball, road tennis, but in particular cricket, have been placed on the table for us to be able to work and assist the Cuban government in that respect. I should have said that in the same way Cuba has provided scholarships for our people in the past, that we will be, under the proposed MOU with the Ministry of Education, be also providing scholarships to Cubans to be able to learn English here so as to be able to go back and continue their work in Cuba as we go forward. And then, of course, in the area of trade and investment, we hope to be able to facilitate meetings not only on this trip, on a parallel track while we meet with CARICOM tomorrow. President is here until Wednesday morning, and we would be in a position to allow for Barbadian private sector who continue to want to invest or to trade with Cuba to be able to meet with the Minister for Foreign Direct Investment while here, so that we can have an even wider footprint of a commercial nature between our two countries. So I'd like to first, therefore, or to finally say, thank you again. I believe that this opportunity of the 50th anniversary between Cuba-CARICOM relations is an opportunity for us to deepen the participation. I didn't speak extensively as to the areas for multi-destination tourism marketing or for travel and for the bridging of the air and sea links. Clearly, one of the first agreements that was signed when we developed diplomatic relations was an air services agreement which still exists. Interregional travel is perhaps at its lowest moment. And I really do hope that over the course of not just these meetings, but the immediate future, that we can work together to find ways to create solutions to solve the very, very vexatious issue of interregional travel, not just alone in the Eastern Caribbean, but across the entire Caribbean, given Cuba's experience and capacity in this area, and then similarly, given what we are trying to do to be able to resolve it within the Eastern and Southern Caribbean ourselves. So, Mr. President, ministers, members of both delegations, thank you very much. And we look forward to tomorrow, which now allows us to speak not as Barbados, but as a member of CARICOM, and to see how Cuba and CARICOM can continue to expand our partnerships, but also our international cooperation, particularly in the area of climate, particularly as Cuba takes chairmanship of the G77 group, and particularly as Barbados continues to work with other countries with the Bridgetown Initiative to see how we can bring about reform of the global financial architecture, but more importantly, to be able to create opportunities for funding and financing for the global south, and indeed a just and fair industrial strategy for those of us who live in the global south. Thank you very much.